The worst part about this is the lights. They get very hot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're ready.
All right? Good.
Yes.
Mrs. Vreeland, we're delighted that you can talk today about some of the things that I think concern you a great deal, and through you have come to concern a vast number of people in our society. Design, fashion, personal style, culture, the good life, those things. And I wonder if you'd be good enough to talk about some of the things that have influenced your enormous range of outlook, your enormous range of interests, but your very special way of viewing things, and special to the point of, I think, in some instances, perhaps being described as outrageous. Not here, but in other quarters. How did you get to be you?
Well, you see, I was born in Paris, and I think it gives a different point of view. And I was brought up there. I was very young when I left, but it was a beginning, and it's never sort of left me. And there's such a wonderful exoticness about the whole world that's had and I've traveled a great deal, and I think that's had an enormous effect, enormous effect.
Do you see essential differences between European, specifically Parisian fashion and American?
Yes, I do. I believe that American fashion is called that because it's available in a shop as fashion. But the actual working out for the generation or the decade that it is intended for, it really takes place in Europe, where there is a very vivid sense of design, which we really haven't gotten to yet. I'm not speaking of art, I'm only talking of clothes.
I understand. Specifically, apparel design. There's some designers we think of, and I think, who think of themselves as American designers. I'm thinking specifically of Bill Blass, who seems to like American materials, though he travels in Italy to find some of them. Do you think really that there isn't a specifically American view, that it is something that we shape out of Europe, much as we have our culture, perhaps?
Well, I don't know any specific American design except the what do you call the pants? What do you call them? Blue jeans.
Yeah.
I think they're great. I've always thought they were great. I've never ceased praising blue jeans, and whether it's a girl or a boy or a man or a woman, I still think they're better turned out in those than anything they wear.
What, in your mind, distinguishes fashion, that which is perhaps available, from, say, style, that which is a personal expression?
Will you tell me again what you
said?
Yes.
If fashion is that which someone might buy in the store, might go to the store and buy fashion, it's certified as fashion because it's designed to be fashion.
Yes.
He or she puts it on, may look wonderful, may look frumpy, may look awful, may look outrageous, out of sort, inappropriate even. Other people might take that same object, enliven it in such a way that it becomes in itself a statement. What makes that difference?
Within the person. Why they're interested in the garment, they put it on, make it for themselves. That's it. That's the way it's going to be. It's going to be open, it's going to be closed, it's going to be fastened, it's going to be knotted here. Whatever it is, they can do anything they want with it.
Do you like that sense of wit and experimentation?
Yes, I think it's essential.
Can you give me some examples of things that you particularly have enjoyed in that? Either people who are good at it, or
because you sort of put on things a little differently each time you put them on, because you don't want to have a waist. You do want to have a waistline. You want to have a wide waistline. You want to have a narrow waistline. You don't want any. I don't know. It changes every time you put something on. I do think that fashion, so-called, is at the moment up to the person who wears the clothes, because the clothes haven't got much cut to them today. So there's a lot up to you.
Well, you you certainly are qualified to make that statement because as much as anyone I can think of, you're knowledgeable about clothes of the past and have been very generous in sharing that knowledge with us in museum exhibitions. Tell me about how you came to do that. I think it's very important that we all see the clothes of the past. How did you start doing it?
Because I was asked to do it, for no other reason. It's the only reason I'm in the fashion business. I was asked.
Why did you say that you would do that, the shows?
Because after a while I said it. I was asked so many times, and then I said yes.
But you find it a good thing to do?
Oh, I love it. I think it's fascinating.
And what would you like to do next in those? What period would you like to explore?
I don't know. I'm interested in the show that we're expecting to open in December, and it's called The 18th Century Woman. And it's an interesting point of view because all over the Western world, so to speak, women were popping up. They were going into businesses. They were writing. They were involved in the workings of the world and their own maintenance. In Denmark, in Holland, in the United States, in France, in England, Spain, and so on.
What are some of the evidences we see of that very active, perhaps surprisingly active life among women in that period? Well, how is that reflected in the clothing?
It's not reflected in the clothing. I don't think it's at all. I very rarely see reflected in the clothing anything that you can trace. As we sit here now and you look back, no, you don't trace anything. As we sit here now, one can kind of trace the future a little bit, less now than ever, because there's no form today. There's no cut, there's no tailoring, there's no real desire for any form.
Why do you think that's so?
I don't know. I think people must be worn out trying to be different. I don't know. I've no idea.
Do you think that looking at wonderfully crafted objects from the past will perhaps inspire people to those same standards again?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I really don't know.
Do designers like your shows? Are they interested? Do they come? And
they come, and I expect they're interested. We sometimes see reactions, you know, or in the market after, for instance, the Hungarian. That was the show before this Chinese show that's on now. And they were very fascinated by the Hungarian, the Habsburg period.
Beautiful show. If you were advising a young designer, what would you say? Do you think, for instance, drawing is important, a sense of history?
I think having a great sense of pleasure and living a big life, as big as you can take without interfering in any way with your work. But I think they have to be together, you see. I don't think that people can just live alone and just say it's going to be like this and like this, because there's no heart in it. There's no sort of razzle-dazzle and excitement in it. It's a thing.
Do you see any evidence of that razzle-dazzle and excitement in some of the things happening now?
I think there's great workmanship today. It's not much found. It's very expensive to have. But I think there's an individuality in the younger people. If they have a boyfriend, if they're out a lot, then they've got to look terrific. So something comes out of that. I don't see too much coming out of the designers. No, I don't.
What would you...
The designers of fabric, I think, are still remarkable. Of course, I'm talking about pure silk, pure wool, pure cotton. I'm talking about things that fall beautifully and are correct, because you have to start at the top. You can't start at the bottom.
We have this enormous array of wonderful materials that are available now. And to some degree, I've always believed that material influenced design. Do you think that happens at all now?
Yes, I think people get hold of the best material they can, that they can afford to put into labor and then sell. But it's all very, very expensive, and that's very, very tough.
Who are some of the people who've most influenced your thinking about design, your eye?
Well, I think the Italian fabric designers and the extraordinary waters around Como, I think they're very responsible for a very great deal. And to mention individual designers, no point in really bringing up, I don't make comparison. It's a decade,
No.
you see.
No.
So what comes out of it? Extraordinary colors and fabrics that survive, but fewer and fewer fabrics are surviving.
I wasn't so much thinking of individual designers as perhaps other people, people with whom you've worked who have been particularly congenial, or people you knew in Europe who encouraged you to undertake this impressive
no one's
career.
ever encouraged me. There are people always trying to get me down. They don't. I don't need encouragement.
Well, surely the Metropolitan encouraged you a bit to come play with them, and I think that's awfully good. Would you make distinctions between design and art?
No, I don't consider artists at all in the world in which we're discussing. This has been the way of the world from the beginning. There's always been ornamentation. People have always wished to have beautiful things. They've always wished to do extraordinary things with themselves. Why? It's just part of the spirit. Art is another thing, but it's I don't suppose it's another thing, but it's in another direction. I never think of art.
Even when you're working at the Metropolitan and designing an exhibition for that great museum of art.
I know, but I don't think of the art upstairs. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, all right.
Of course, I think of it, but I mean not when I'm doing the show. But everything must be very worthy. Very.
Do you think photography, particularly published photography, has had an impact on?
Yes, I think it's given a speed and direction and a pizzazz that has projected fashion beautifully.
Are there any photographers you've liked working with, especially?
Well, all the photographers I've ever worked with, I love working with. Of course, I haven't worked with photographers in 10 years, you know, since I've been at the Metropolitan, except to help them with a photograph, that's nothing. But in all the years that I did 2 issues a month, you know, 2 big fat issues a month, there was a lot of editing. And it was great. I just adored working with everybody.
Did you find that you were able to communicate an idea or a mood to photographers, or did you prefer to have them come in and let you select from what they had done?
Oh, no, we always talked everything over before they went to the studio. And then, of course, they'd come out with many more ideas of their own, which had developed through seeing the clothes and, you know, after our conversation and all that.
And were you pleased with that? Did that sometimes cause you to think again about something or see things in a different way?
No, I think we saw it pretty clearly, because after all, everything was on and up, you know, keep moving. We were doing 2 or 3 or 4 issues at the same time.
Amazing. What about models? Did you ever have models who informed clothing in a particular way so that it took on a special look, a better look?
Yes, I think so. Yes, I think models were very important in the 60s and in the 50s, very.
Talk about that a little bit.
It was very interesting because they were very attractive, all these Europeans that came over. They were Swedish, they were Polish, they were German, they were French, they were Swiss, they were Italian. And they had great personality. They had personal lives of tragedy and glory, and everything was going on for them. And it was their life. To be a mannequin those days was a great life. It's a great life today, but it's not as extraordinary as it used to be because it's been lived before. And it sort of started in the 60s, you know. So you asked me, did I think they had a great effect on the clothes and the photographer? And yes, I do, and on the reader.
Do you think that designers are ever tempted to create or design for a model or for a photographer?
Well, it's an interesting question. If they did, it was probably some time ago. I shouldn't think they'd be doing it now. It probably was 10, 15 years ago that they would have in mind a certain thing, you see. And this is the way it's going to be. Whether it ever came off or not, it's not the point. It's the inspiration you speak of.
Right.
Yes.
Do you think that designers now are designing for a huge market, for a small group of people? What kinds of either economic or aesthetic forces are perhaps shaping?
No, do I think people are designing for a huge market?
Designers, do you think they're addressing a large market? Is that the major concern?
Well, you see, they're designing to sell, and their price makes a great deal of difference. And the quality workmanship that they have to pay for, and the whole turnover of the thing is on a very big level. Today it's an absurd level. It's absolutely absurd. Because the only people that really look well in clothes are people who are leading a great life and have a marvelous figure, and the chances are they're quite young, but they haven't got the money to pay for these clothes. And so, who are you designing for? Well, you got to fall in between all these kind of things, I guess, you know? And you've got to take something that someone else has cut for a size 10, size 8, size 6 size. Boy, you can go right down to a very small size. You can go right up to about, I suppose, 12, 14. How many do you sell? That's really what it amounts to. It's got to be. It's got to be, otherwise it isn't sensible.
How do you feel about the great interest in synthetic fabrics?
Well, I think there's naturally a great place for them. One can't say there's no place for them. But I remember when I first went down to 7th Avenue, and I wasn't first on 7th Avenue, but when they were first, the synthetic fabrics. And I remember this man who I knew very well in business. He had a big, marvelous business. And he was beautifully dressed in an English suit, and then a marvelous shirt, all made to order, all of the purest cotton or linen, and most beautiful wool. And he showed me the synthetic this and this. And I said, listen, do you think I'm going to try and get the American woman interested in something that you wouldn't wear for half an hour? It would drive you crazy. And here you are in the best wool, the best cotton, the best of everything, whether it's your socks or your shoes or what it is. And you're trying to make money off of people to wear these terrible synthetics, because they did drive you crazy to wear, you know. They've improved. I suppose for a bouffant skirt it doesn't make much difference. It's got a little body in it, you know, and you can handle it. But close to the body, I don't quite get it. I'd rather have a pure silk shirt, or I'd rather have a pure wool shirt, or whatever it would be, that you'd be working in all day in the synthetic. Wouldn't it be awful? I don't know. It is for me.
Are you noticing any return to formality in clothing now? Do you think we're...
I don't think I have any other place to go.
Well, that may be it. How do you feel about that, about appropriateness, about wearing something at one moment and something else at another moment? Do you think that's...
Suitability.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know. It's quite an expensive game. It's like checkers. You have to know which way to move and have it on hand, don't you?
Well, do you think that people are looking for all-around outfits, things that can live through a day and into the evening, or do you think people are...
Well, I think living through the day into the evening is ghastly, because, I mean, there is such a thing as the day. And that's an entire vision between your mind and the opportunities that happen during that day and the job to be done that day. And then the evening comes. That's another thing. Unless you're taking your work home. Everybody's done that who works. But I'm talking about the regular routine. That's what you mean, isn't it?
Yes. And I think special events being marked by a sense of festivity, going to the opera or going to a party.
Oh, I think it's appalling Not to, if you want to go to the opera, then get out on time, but arrange it if necessary 2 weeks in advance, that you'll get out on time in order to make a little bit of difference to you. It isn't for the other people that you dress.
Mm-hmm.
It's for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Is it that sense of self in a situation that determines suitability?
Don't you think?
Oh, I do.
Yes, yes, definitely.
What about the difference between weekdays and weekends? Do you think those should be marked also by costume?
Yes, I do.
Blue jeans at some point in the
Yes,
weekend.
exactly, exactly. No question you can do, it's your time.
Mm-hmm. And you signal it by
doing as you choose for yourself.
Do you view clothing as the outward condition of the inner person?
Yes, I think so.
Can you give me some examples?
The outward expression of the inner person.
Yes.
I don't know how to give an example.
Are there people you can just think of who just delight you because they look so right? There's just something about somebody coming into a room and you just smile.
Yeah. Because I think Mary McFadden always looks very attractive, don't you?
Yes, and I think that's a very good example of somebody looking just the way she should.
Yes, she's great. I really can't tell you.
How about other objects, not just clothing, but other things that we live with? How do you feel about the design of implements and objects and tableware and things that surround us?
I think they're very important to oneself.
Mm-hmm.
How a handle of a knife feels, I think that's very attractive.
I'm such a mossback that I don't like writing with ballpoint pens. I still like a fountain pen, and it's because I can't stand the way the ballpoint touches the paper. I like the flow of ink.
Yes.
It doesn't make my penmanship that much better, and certainly it's not that much more convenient because they're always leaking. But something about the way...
the ink falls. Oh, I agree with you.
Oh.
And it makes your writing effortless.
Oh.
Effortless.
Is ease something that you ask of the objects in your life?
Yes. It's very important. Anything that's a bit sticky and difficult, I don't think even works well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it exists except as a sort of a stubborn failure for what it is. Because writing, after all, is a necessity. We all do it all day. Can't quite think of anything else, because I don't cook. I should think one would fall in love with pots and pans and things that one does, but
Sure.
I don't do them, so I don't know.
But I think even things like bed linens or towels or are really mundane things of that sort.
Linen is so divine, isn't it divine?
That's right.
Yeah.
I should think that all things that surround you, that you see, that you touch, that you smell, would be important to you.
Very, very.
Do you like flowers?
Oh, I adore them.
We wouldn't dream of not having them about.
Can you imagine life without them?
No, I surely can't.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you find particularly encouraging or delightful in trends of the moment in fashion?
Well, I wish I could talk more spontaneously on this. It's a trend. It suggests some trends, and then.
Well, we've talked a little bit about a seeming increase in interest in making a demarcation between the life of the workday and the life of the festive evening or occasion.
Or any evening.
Or any, all right, that's a very
Any
important
evening,
thing.
I think, is vital. I mean, if you're going to spend the evening answering your private mail or reading a special thing in a book that you want to have ready in the morning, it's your evening. I think it's very important.
Would you extend that to talk about it's your life and it should be
Yes, and
clothed
it's
and
at
designed?
home. And so, well, I mean, you don't make a grand toilette, you haven't time. But one gets into a jalaba and is very comfortable, and you're at home in your own apartment.
Do you travel a great deal.
I used to travel more than I do now, but I've never traveled as much as I did last week.
Where were you last week?
I was in Rome for about 31 hours. I mean, getting out. It took me about 31
Dear
hours to
me.
get home. No, it's very complicated. But that's boring. It's just an event of the times. And the luxury has gone out of travel. But I love to be airborne, and I love to be abroad. Love it.
And you like variety and excitement in people and objects.
Well, I think it's the world in which we live. That's it.
You don't see one culture on one side of the Atlantic and another culture in the East and another culture in Europe.
I don't see anything except but just the sort of glory and the splendor and the fun and the magnificence. I mean, these things are wonderful. They're here to be had, and might as well have them. Most people do.
And do you regard that as a good direction, a healthy trend in our lives?
Now, what?
Having good things, wanting good things, travel, excitement, delights.
Well, I hope so.
Good.
I hope so, because I do believe in pleasure. And I think so few people have the sort of appetite for it. Or
Isn't that interesting that that so many people seem so preoccupied with frivolity, with what seems to be pleasure, and yet there isn't a great deal of evidence that we've really surpassed a funny kind of dourness. And even the I see people roller skating on the sidewalk. Well, that should be just a lark. I mean, it's such a peculiar thing to be doing, and they're out there doing it, and they're wired for sound, and they're moving. But there's an intensity or a preoccupation in what they're doing that suggests that it's not a pleasure that engages both mind and body.
no, I suppose it's quite an intense situation they've got in hand there.
Not to break knees.
Not to, I mean, to remember that the sidewalk comes to an end and you start again and
Yeah.
all that sort of thing. The thing I envy people are the skid boards, what do you call them?
Oh,
Because in front of the museum...
skateboards, yes.
I think it's so wonderful. Oh, God, if I could only go home like that every night. It's just too beautiful.
Well, you probably could, but I don't think it's advisable. It's
too dark
perilous.
when I go.
Yes, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you would like us to talk about in the realm of design or museums or fashion or the world?
Well, to get really to design in the dress business, which has been my business for many years, I think that the tailor is being forgotten. Oh, there are no more tailors, you're told. Well, of course, they must be somewhere, but if people don't use them, there will be no more tailors. And nothing's cut anymore. Everything's kind of draped and heaped and put around. And, I miss the shape of things, meaning the shape of things to come. But without tailors, I don't see how it's going to ever be anything but a whole mound of a lot of material.
What about knitting, this great interest currently in
I
forming?
think it's very pretty, very pretty. I don't think it's the beginning and end of dressmaking, but I don't think it's even the beginning of dressmaking. I think it's an accessory. I mean, little gilets and pretty little waistcoats and pullovers and all that. Very nice, great, we all need them. But it's not dressmaking. And that's what I worry about, because where's the firm scissors? Where's the firm... I don't know, that worries me.
Well, I will share the worry, and thank you very much for this conversation. I hope it hasn't been too painful.
Thank you very much for asking me.
It was good of you to come. How does it look?
That's good.
Great. We will unhinge you. That's it.
All right.